Hi, my name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Innovation Showcase. The main purpose of this ongoing series is to inform viewers about exciting innovations and creative individuals across the fields of business, science, technology, education, and the arts. Today, via Zoom, we're fortunate to have as our guest Weston native Monet Izabeth. In January, Monet became the first American woman to complete a solo, unsupported ski expedition to the South Pole, a 700-mile journey across Antarctica that took 57 days, pulling a sled weighing more than 250 pounds, enduring whiteouts, brutal winds, and temperatures plunging far below zero. During the program, we'll find out why and how this incredible undertaking came about, and in the process, come to better understand and appreciate that Monet's journey is not only a story of physical endurance, but also of mental fortitude, patience, and belief in possibility. Let's start by meeting Monet and then hearing all about her incredible achievement. Welcome, Monet. So delighted you're able to be here.
Thank you for having me. You made me sound amazing. I was reliving the expedition as you were
Oh, well, you
introducing
are
me.
amazing. Let me just join so many others with congratulations on this outstanding undertaking and achievement. Eager to hear so much more about it and have you inform viewers. But before we jump right to that, I think it would be of interest if you briefly share maybe a little more about your background and how your interest in exploration and adventure came about.
Yeah, sure. So I work in adventure travel. I'm not sure if anyone who gets into adventure travel gets there through like a sort of standard route. There is no standard route. But for me, I was interested in filmmaking when I left college, and I was interested in travel. And then I had this absolutely one in a million story drop into my lap where my great uncle's plane, so my father's mother's brother, he went missing in action while training in Kenya during World War II. And in 2016, his plane was found on Mount Kenya. And I was able to go with the British Army on a British Army-led expedition to basically find the plane crash on Mount Kenya. It's at just about 10,000 feet. They knew vaguely where it was, but not exactly. So it was really a true expedition. And it was incredibly difficult. I had no idea what I was doing. They allowed me to go. I filmed the whole thing. And after that was over, we had found the plane. We'd run out of food on the way back down. I
Wow.
thought we were going to die. We were not, but my inexperienced 26-year-old brain was like, I'm going to die. I thought that whatever that was, I don't know really what that was, but I want to do that for the rest of my life. So I
Wow.
ended up getting into adventure travel and just taking on bigger and bigger challenges, which eventually led me to the South Pole.
Yeah, what drew you to Antarctica, and when did the idea of a solo, unsupported ski expedition become something you believed you actually could do?
Yeah, so I'd unexpectedly spent time in Greenland during the pandemic because I was on a dog sled in Greenland with no cell service like March 9th through 13th, 2020. When everything changed, I had no idea what was going on.
Oh, wow.
And so I turned on my phone. I got cell service on March, like that Friday the 13th, when everything melted down, and found out what had been going on. And I didn't get on I was thinking, I'll wait it out in Greenland for a couple days and see how it goes. And then ended up spending 4 months in 2 months in lockdown in Nuuk, 4 months in Greenland. And I just fell in love with Greenland as a country, with the people of Greenland, and I loved being close to the Arctic or in the
Hmm.
Arctic, and I loved the landscapes. So that was when I learned that you could actually cross the Greenlandic ice cap, and I thought, wow, maybe that's something I'll do in 15 years or something. Maybe one day I could do that. And then later on, in 2022, I read about Preet Chandi, who had become the first woman of color to do a solo, unsupported expedition to the South Pole. I'd never heard of that before. I did not know that was something that you could do. And sort of similar with the ice cap, I was like, wow, that's the coolest thing I've ever heard. But I obviously can't do that because I don't know really how to ski. I've never winter camped. I haven't really spent time in polar environments. But as I read more and more about how Preet spoke about her training, she said, I didn't know how to ski. I didn't even know where
Wow.
Antarctica was. And I just realized that I could not get the idea out of my head that maybe that it was just something that like the seed was planted and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And at some point it became the only thing stopping me is fear, and that's not a good enough reason. So I need to look into this more. So that's when I signed up for a training course with Polar Explorers, an American company. And after that, I decided, okay, this is something I'm really going to go for.
Wow, incredible. Can you build a little on that and tell us what was your training like, both with the company and then on your own? I know you invested so much time.
Yes. Yeah, so with Polar Explorers, the introduction course, they call it a polar shakedown. It was in Svalbard. So it was 5 days, and we spent 2 or 3 nights camping out in Svalbard. We were in a snowstorm, we were on polar bear watch. It was a really good, and it was very cold. So it was a really good introduction to what an expedition could be like, but of course, much shorter. And those guides, when I told them, sort of like shaking in my boots, I was like, I'm sort of thinking about maybe skiing solo to the South Pole. I really expected them to laugh at me because I had zero experience. But they took me so seriously and they said, 100% you can do it. You're going to
Wow.
have to train for it, but you can do it. And that was really the spark that sent me off because I was like, wow, I was almost hoping they were going to say, no, of course you cannot do it. You're crazy. But when they had so much faith in me, I was like, okay. So I hired a coach, John Farram, he's Scottish, of E3 coaching. And he had trained Preet Chandi actually for her first
Ah,
solo, which was really cool. And he's just an expert in preparing for these kinds of things and has worked with a lot of women too. So I trained for over 2 years with him before the expedition. And so that was 6 days a week of physical training that included, cardio, strength training, running, and the most obvious, like the most infamous training that I did was pulling tires. So I
yeah.
would pull tires for up to 5 hours at a time. And that is the best way to mimic what it's like to pull a sled through
Mhm.
snow. And I use the same harness system to pull the tires as I do to pull the sleds on expedition. And then on top of just the physical training, I did expedition training. So I did a solo in Minnesota where I fell through the ice. The first time I was out alone, I fell through the ice
Wow.
in
Ah,
Minnesota. I did a 30-day crossing of the Greenlandic ice cap as part of my training. So I did get to make that dream come true. And I did that with Polar Explorers that was guided by them. And then I also did a 2-week solo expedition in Norway.
incredible, incredible. In addition to all the physical training, could you share a little bit of the extensive logistics you had to be juggling at the same time? I mean, I know I have enough trouble packing for a weekend away. How do you do something like this?
You have a mother who helps you pack every single time. Oh, my mom was a big help, and if I was packing from her house, she was always there helping. No, but the logistics are, I mean, part of that is part of the training, for my solos and also for Greenland. I was in charge of handling my food logistics is a really big one because you are trying
Yeah.
to, when you're out for a week or you're out for 2 weeks, you can be a little bit more loosey-goosey about bringing more food or less food because the weight won't matter so much. But
Hmm.
when you're gone for a month or like the South Pole, 2 months, you have every calorie accounted for down to, do I have
Wow.
an extra chocolate bar? Do I have it's you really, I knew how many calories I needed each day. And then I had to spend, I spent 2 months before I got to the South Pole figuring out all like I had spreadsheets tracking every calorie, every gram of fat, protein, carb, to make sure that I would get the nutrition that I needed. And
Hmm.
also that's you see like my expedition I was hoping to do it in 50 days, but I planned for 57 and I finished on day 57. So
Yeah.
you really learn
Wow.
how important it is to have your rations correct.
For sure. For sure. Wow. How do you prepare for the psychological demands of being completely alone for weeks?
Going into it, I people were really worried. When I talked about I'm doing this expedition, I'll be down there for 2 months alone. Everyone was asking, how are you going to handle that being alone?
Yeah.
And it wasn't something that I was worried about. I just knew that from my training and from being alone in Norway, that it probably wasn't, I didn't feel like it was going to be an issue for me. But I also knew that I'd never, the longest I'd been solo was 2 weeks. And that's, 57 days is a lot longer than 14
Yeah.
days. But the truth is, it wasn't an issue at all for me. Potentially because I'm an introvert, or like I'm like an extroverted introvert. I need a lot of recharging time alone. It didn't bother, I was never lonely. But the truth is that you're so busy on an expedition. If I was sitting in a cabin alone for 2 months, I would get lonely.
Mm-hmm.
But on an expedition for 2 months, every minute of your time, you're either skiing or eating or sleeping. And if you're doing one thing, you're thinking about the next one that you're going to be doing. So there was almost no, like I was dying for downtime to just sit and have a moment to think about things. But you just need, especially, and as you get further into the expedition, you have to be more and more efficient with your time. And when you're inefficient, it causes this domino effect of things starting to go wrong. You don't get enough sleep, and then you're
Mm.
slow in the morning, and then you don't ski as long the next day, and you don't get your mileage that you need. So the mental pressure is actually the hardest thing mentally for me was the mental pressure of mileage and efficiency. I found that much more difficult. Being alone didn't faze me at all, but having to be efficient at all costs for 57 days in a row, that was exhausting and really hard and something I couldn't have. I mean, I prepared for it through other expeditions, but the length of time that you're doing it, you just have to do it. There's no other way to prepare for it.
What did you tell yourself, say on the hardest days when quitting might have seemed like a reasonable option?
Oh, I had many things I said to myself. I'd actually written some things inside my tent that so I would open my eyes in the morning, and the first thing I would see was the only way out is through, and the only way through is to keep going. So get up. I would say that to myself a lot while I was skiing. There's also a great one that's from a Robert Service poem that says, plugging away will win the day. And that I would just say that sometimes I would just say that over and over again to myself while I was sometimes out loud while I was skiing. Um, there was, just telling myself that I sometimes on the really, really hard days, and I had really hard days. I had days where I was truly miserable and
Yeah.
miserable not just for one day, but 5 days in a row or six
Oof.
days in a row because we had horrible weather. And I always say, people have pointed out that I keep saying we, and I'm literally talking about me and my sleds because I thought of us as a team and I would talk to my sleds. There was a really hard day when I was in the 82nd degree of latitude. I was stuck in this area of sastrugi, it's wind-swept ice, and the winds get really strong and they create these grooves in the ice. They're really hard, like physically hard. And they can be quite large. And there was this one area where it was just every inch of the ice was covered in them, the sastrugi. And
Wow.
the only option was to pull my sleds over them, which is like if you can think of like a museum diorama of like the world's mountain ranges, and
Yeah.
you're pulling 250 pounds on sleds over these like mountain ranges, these small mini mountain ranges. That's what it felt like. And I actually had to unclip from my sleds and take off my skis and scout the route ahead, which is something I'd never had to do and
Wow.
didn't even think I was ever going to have to do,
Yeah.
to try to find my way out of the sort of ice ridges that I was in. And when I came back to my sleds, I turned to them very dramatically and I said, I'm getting us out of here. Like I was a superhero in an action movie. And then I did, it took about 6 more hours, but I did get us out of there eventually.
It sounds like something Shackleton said when
Yeah.
he was iced in or
I think
something.
Shackleton probably cried less than I did.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know, but definitely as noteworthy. We're fortunate that you've shared with us, and we're going to screen share them now, some wonderful images from the expedition. So as I bring them up, we'll go through them and appreciate some commentary as we make our way through. And I think the first one finds us sort of day one arriving.
Oh yeah, so this is the drop off at my start point. So essentially my start point is the edge of the Antarctic landmass, which you cannot see because the landmass of Antarctica is covered with thousands and thousands of feet of ice. So here it's about 1,000 feet of ice, roughly. And in order to have my expedition be, a proper full solo on this route, I have to ski to the edge of the landmass. So I get dropped off on the ice shelf, which has, ocean beneath 1,000 feet of ice. And
Wow.
I ski to the first waypoint, which is the grounding line or waypoint 0, and that's where the actual edge of the continent is, deep below
Mm.
the ice. But this is the ALE's plane, which dropped me off on the ice shelf in the middle of nowhere. What you can't see here is that it was extremely windy that day. Oh my gosh, it was a really overwhelming start because we had taken off from ALE's camp, which was about 20-minute flight away. And it had been lovely, wonderful weather. And then as
Ah.
we started getting closer to the landing point, the plane started going whoo, like, stomach dropping. I thought I was going
Oh,
to vomit. Everyone else on
oh.
the plane thought they were going to vomit. But we landed on the ice to very high winds. And I essentially, it was just sort of the pilot got down and said, well, this is quite the first day, which is how you know it's, how you
Whoops,
know it's
what have I gotten
windy.
into? The next one is a wonderful selfie you took that gives a little sense of the incredible expanse that you faced every day. Just a few words about looking out and just seeing more and more ice and snow.
Yeah, that was the point of view for, 2 months essentially. You can actually see Sestrugi in the background there.
Mm,
Um, yeah, it was, you start to notice it looks very similar, but then it doesn't take long for you to start to see how little small details will change every single day. And then ended up every single day would feel very different. But it was an incredible feeling to know that I was kind of this tiny speck in a white expanse.
wow, wow. And there's a wonderful shot. I mean, there are so many, and we're fortunate we're going to have a few to show the unbelievable scenery. But could you say a few words about your tent and that whole setup that went into every day, every night that you were on this expedition?
Yeah, so that's my Hilleberg tent. It's a winter tent, but it's not insulated. It feels very summer to what if you've summer camped of what a summer camp tent might feel like. And I would set it up every single evening, put snow around the flaps that my mom sewed on for me around the edge of the tent, to help insulate it and keep it protected from winds, and then break it down every morning and roll it up, put it on my sled, and move on to my next campsite.
And this next one is a wonderful shot of just some of the items that you brought along. Could you just share about what we're seeing here and what went into the packing thinking?
Yeah, so this is my kitchen setup, as I like to call it. You can actually see where my feet are. Every evening, I would dig out a hole for my feet to sit in. It makes it much more comfortable and
Ah,
also can act to pull cold air down into the hole.
ah.
And then I would sort of the setup here is how it looked every single day, which is, kind of interesting for your brain because the inside of your tent would look the same every single evening. It was hard to tell that you had different campsites. Um,
Yeah.
But yeah, I have my food. You can see on the right that yellow thing in a bag is butter. It's just butter to add to my
Oh,
dinner
yeah.
and add to my hot chocolate. My stove and gas setup is on the left. And then everything that lived inside my tent went into that blue IKEA bag in front of my feet. And I would
Mm,
I would bring it in, unpack it, repack it in the morning. Um, but yeah, everything was essential. Nothing was there for luxury. I used everything, not one extra ounce. I tried not to bring anything extra that I didn't need.
sure. Wow. Incredible. Um, these next few, I mean, this is breathtaking just to look at this shot. What's it like to be out there? What are you thinking as you're trudging through, carrying 250 plus pounds and just moving day after day?
I mean, you think about everything and you think about nothing. My brain would just, on the best days, my body would ski, my brain would wander, and the hours would fly by. And on the hardest days, I would sometimes pick something. Either I would listen to a book, I would listen to music, one album over and over and over again for the entire day, or I would pick something to think about. Like I'm going to think about my best friend from home and every memory that we've had together. And
Mm,
I'm just going to go over that in my mind. Yeah, it's you really have to, it takes a lot of, as you said, mental fortitude to keep going for 57 days. And you learn a lot of tricks along the way to make that happen.
for sure. Wow. And I'm sure tricks that you take with you just back in the States or wherever you might be as far as shaping your day-to-day life more as a civilian now.
Well, yeah, I mean, you definitely get some perspective on what it means to have to go through something hard. After making it through 57 days in Antarctica, I was so happy sitting in Boston traffic the other day. I was like, I'm warm in the car. I just have to press my foot on the gas pedal to move. I have music that I can listen to. I had the best time.
I know, as mentioned to you before we started recording, myself and others have been moaning the cold weather here, that wind chill, not even the real temperature, dips a little below zero. Thinking of what you had to endure for 57 plus days. But then the accomplishment, just a few words about your feeling and just the scenery when you came into the ending here.
I mean, it was so overwhelming to have it be finished. It was in the true sense unbelievable and it's still like I feel like I'm lying when I tell you about the expedition now. That's how unbelievable it feels that it even happened. The South Pole is very ugly, I will say.
Hmm.
It's not a very pretty place. It looks like a big construction site. There's lots of work vehicles all around. This makes it kind of look like there's nothing in the distance, but on all other sides of this photograph, there are snow vehicles and tire tracks and signs of humanity. But the meaning of being there was unbelievable and just a feeling unlike anything. The knowing that I would unclip my sled and not have to pull it one more day or one more step if I didn't want to and that I had achieved this goal that I'd set out to achieve 3 years earlier. It was absolutely I was unable to comprehend it, and I'm still soaking it in now.
Oh, for sure, for sure. These next two are
I
showing
cried a
you,
lot.
yeah, understandable. You're with somebody else who also achieved this incredible goal.
Yep, that's Andy Durantes, and she became the first Mexican and the first person from Latin America to do the same expedition. She'd finished just the day before me. She was the first person I hugged once I was done. I mean, I had not hugged another human being for 57 days. I had not spoken to another human being face to face for 57 days. So when we saw each other, I immediately was sobbing and she was hugging me, but also we just started talking to each other like the words were just like a waterfall out of our mouths talking
Hmm.
about our expeditions.
And this fabulous shot just posing there after the incredible accomplishment. Wow.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. That was actually the day after I finished. We went, you saw I'm wearing a different outfit, you can tell a little bit. And then we came back to the pole to take photographs and soak it in without my sleds and everything. It was just incredible. Really, really hard to understand.
That's for sure. That's for sure. What do you say to others who might be considering, sure, that's for sure. What do you say to others who might be considering some bold, unconventional goal? What can they take away from your story, do you think?
Do it. 100% do it. If you want it, do it. I think the whole journey of deciding to do this, I mean, the expedition was incredibly difficult, and I would not call it fun. It is not fun. Chasing a big dream, achieving a big dream, not fun. It is really, really hard, but it's
Yeah.
also the most fulfilling, most incredible feeling that I've ever had. The days before when I knew I was probably, bar some horrible accident, I was gonna reach the pole, that the feeling it was like something I want to put in a perfume bottle and spritz on myself whenever I need it, because that feeling of knowing, oh my gosh, I'm still in the moment striving for this goal. It's not over yet, and I'm gonna make it. And I've been thinking about this goal every single day for 3 years. That was an incredible feeling. Those days were still really, really hard, but you'd have these moments of like a pure euphoric high, feeling like, wow, I'm actually going to make this is actually going to happen. So do it. If you have that thing, if you have that itch, you just have to take it one day at a time. I am like a surprisingly normal human who decided to do this. I am not a professional athlete. I just found the resources to help me. Like I got a coach, and I just took it day by day. And you can achieve some absolutely insane goals if you just take it day by day.
Oh, that's fabulous. And just building on your enthusiasm and encouragement, I think can take all of us farther extremes than we could imagine. In closing, after accomplishing such an extraordinary goal, how do you decide? It's only a matter of days, I know, since you've really done it. How do you decide what's next? Does that even cross your mind, or you're still soaking it in, I know?
No, I mean, I've been thinking, and I've been asked that question, and I've been thinking about it since before I even went to
Hmm.
Antarctica. People were saying, how do you do something after the South Pole? I'm really trying not to make any sort of decisions, but the dream part of my brain is dreaming. It's what it does. I can't stop it. But honestly, really, my next big thing is I want to write a book about the training for the South Pole and completing the goal and really process that before I take
Yeah.
on another big thing.
That'd be fabulous. In closing, how can viewers and others find out more about the journey, possibly get in touch with you and keep in contact to hear about whether it's the book or other upcoming undertakings?
Yeah, I love hearing from people. So if anyone has an inkling to reach out, please do it. You can get in contact with me through my website, which is monetizabeth.com. You can find me on Instagram at monet.izabeth, and you can find me on Substack. My Substack is called How to Be a Polar Explorer.
Ah, fabulous. Well, we'll be sure to put those links in our closing credits. But for now, Monet, I just have to say, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the program. Thank you once again so much for taking the time to be here, for informing us a little bit about the behind the scenes of this incredible undertaking you took and accomplished, and just want to wish you continued success with future endeavors.
Thank you so much for having me. I love talking about it.
Also want to thank those of you watching for joining us and hope you'll be able to tune in next time.